Thank you for taking the time to meet with me, Doug. Please tell us your full name, the current position you hold, and how you came to be in that position.
My name is Doug Fogelsong. My title is Community Spiritual Leader, which is another phrase to say Senior Minister of this Center for Spiritual Living, Greater Las Vegas. I've been here since July of 1999. In our denomination, we can candidate for an open pulpit, which means we find out the availability of the job. We go to that place if we are invited by their search committee, and we give a sermon, and the process differs, but it's a self-selected opportunity, and then the congregation has final say as to who they accept.
Please outline for us the basic principles as you see them of New Thought.
New Thought as a movement has its roots in some Eastern philosophies and traditions, Eastern meaning Indian, Hindu, some Buddhist kinds of things, but it really began in New England in the 19th century. And the principle behind New Thought, or the concept, is that the human mind influences one's environment to the extent that, in essence, mind creates your world. Not the world, but your world. My mind creates my experience of the world. Your mind does the same thing. One's mind creates that.
If my mind creates my experience of the world, does it also create the reality of my world, or only the way I experience that reality? Does it actually change some objective reality?
I guess yes, except what is objective. You know, in order to be...
something that a third-party independent observer would agree upon.
Yes. Yes. And the way I can prove that for myself is when I get with my sisters and we talk about an event that we all experienced together in childhood or any other time we were together, and there are likely 4 different interpretations of that experience. So from the inside, my experience is different. From an observer's perspective, the event happens, but my experience of it is the reality for me. Just as the observer's experience of it is the reality for them. I feel like I'm talking in circles, but...
My understanding is that if I believe that I'm likely to succeed at a particular endeavor, that will influence my actual outcome the same way as if I believe in the likelihood of my failure in a particular endeavor will influence my actual outcome.
Yes.
So in that way, my thoughts impact actual observable reality. I got the sale, the enterprise succeeded, I got the girl, whatever the endeavor might have been, my thoughts are going to directly impact that.
Yes. Yeah, was it Henry Ford that said, if I think I can, I'm right. If I think I can't, I'm right.
Well, I think he did say that, but I think he was repeating Abe Lincoln.
Yeah. I mean, and so again, and one of the cliches of New Thought is there's no such thing as New Thought, it's ancient. You know, there's never a new thought. This is ancient wisdom, ancient truth that has been known by, well, I mean, if you look at the mystical aspect of any faith, what they're talking about seems to be the same thing. We just word it differently according to the context of the world we live in, or our religion, but the mystical arm of Islam, the mystical arm of Judaism, the mystical arm of Christianity, all of them, the people who wrote and spoke about it from that place are saying the same thing. You know, the unity of all creation, the oneness that is God, those kind of things. And we've lost it in ritual and rules and power struggles and costumes and
politics
and that.
Is there a way to self-generate a call?
Well, yes, because that's really the way all of them are. I mean, a lot of people, I'm sure, have a call that they don't respond to. So it's more in the response than the generation of it. So maybe it's about uncovering it, revealing it, getting clear on it.
So you think that all of us are experiencing a call all the time? We just might be closing our ears to it.
That and we tend to make it more grandiose than it needs to be. I think. I mean, the word call has all of that weight of the divine kind of on it, right? It's a capital C probably and everything. So it's like, no, what is it that you love to do? What do you lose all sense of time while you're doing it? That is in some way a part of the unique gifts, talents, abilities that you were created with. So whatever that is, begin to explore that. It's not necessarily about making money or earning a living, although that can certainly be a part of it, and it probably could be for almost all of it. But what is it that you are uniquely suited for? What is it that lights you up, that allows you to mostly enjoy what you're doing, that kind of thing? I mean, the process that I described early on was the logistics of how this happened. The call to ministry, for me, was never all that clear. I don't know that it still is. It's just about taking the next indicated step for me. I think to generate your own call is really about becoming aware of what you've been brought forth to express. It's already there.
Was there a moment when you had an epiphany that you knew serving others was something that would be a major aspect of your life?
I don't think it was an epiphany, but it was a realization that was pretty clear. And I was in high school, and the first 2 years of high school were in a separate building than the second 2 years. And on lunch or study hall breaks, I would sit usually by myself, and people would come and talk to me just to unload.
You were the town shrink.
I guess, but see, what was weird about that was I never said anything. I don't remember ever saying anything. And they walked away feeling better. And I was like, well, that was easy. So
well, that's usually what most of us need, is somebody to hear us.
That's what
feel heard.
That's what really drew me into this practice, the licensed professional practitioner idea, which is our lay ministry, are people who are trained in the art of listening, actively and otherwise, compassionate listening. And I absolutely agree that most people just need somebody to hear what they're saying, or hear where they are, or hear what they're feeling. And what I believe, thanks to this teaching, is that the answers lie within the person who's talking, not within me. I don't have your answers. So that was a realization that was, if an epiphany is something that guides your life, then that's what that was.
What's your favorite movie?
Wow. Well, the first one that came to mind was The Wizard of Oz, so I guess
Why?
I'll stay there. Her voice and the music, I think it's probably not the fantasy of it, but the idea that there are both worlds in each of us.
Okay. Who are your heroes?
I have pretty personal heroes. My parents, my partner. Again, just going on.
Why?
When it first comes up.
Why your parents and why your
My
partner?
parents, because they've known each other their whole lives, and they got married at 21, which I think is ridiculously young for anybody to marry. And they raised 4 kids, each of whom has a degree of success and some happiness at least. And they've stayed together through times that were rough for them financially and otherwise. And they've established for me a benchmark of relationship that I aspire to, in a world where relationship and commitment is not necessarily honored except as an idea anymore. For me, they're still married after 57 years, and it's just remarkable to me, that for better or for worse, they did it, and they're still doing it. So that's awesome, and I think there's a lot of courage in being a parent.
Why your partner?
Because he is fearlessly himself and doesn't really, in spite of the religion of his upbringing, was not kowtowed and was not ground down by it, and was not did not buy the party line.
What religion was he raised in?
He was raised LDS, and from his earliest recollection of his church experience was asking questions because things didn't make sense, and he was excused to go sit in the hall.
Thank you so much for taking the time to meet with me.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to meet with me, Doug. Please tell us your full name, the current position you hold, and how you came to be in that position.
My name is Doug Fogelsong. My title is Community Spiritual Leader, which is another phrase to say senior minister of this Center for Spiritual Living, Greater Las Vegas. I've been here since July of 1999. In our denomination, we can candidate for an open pulpit, which means we find out the availability of the job. We go to that place if we are invited by their search committee, and we give a sermon, and the process differs, but it's a self-selected opportunity, and then the congregation has final say as to who they accept.
Please tell us a little bit about your family of origin, where you were born, where you grew up.
I was born and raised in Northeast Ohio, in a relatively small town outside of Akron. I'm third in line of 4 children. I have 3 sisters, no brothers. My parents, classic 50s parents. My dad worked, pharmacist. My mother was a housewife for most of my youth, and then she began to work on her own as well.
What, if any, religion were you raised in?
We were raised Presbyterian.
What's the name of the denomination?
This is Centers for Spiritual Living.
And it changed its name recently. What was its name prior to that?
Originally it was called the Church of Religious Science.
And why did it change?
I'll give you 2 main reasons. In this country especially, people are not as interested in church as they are in spirituality. At least the people who we're reaching out to. So to take the word church out of it took that barrier away from many people. The other thing about religious science as a name is that it in this country is confused with many other, not many, but a couple of other faiths or practices that don't have a very good reputation sometimes. And rather than have us be embarrassed or ashamed about what it was that we were believing in,
they heard Scientology.
They heard Scientology, they heard Christian Science, they heard some other, those kinds of things that, for better and for worse, there's not a lot that is actually known about them, but a lot of mythology has sprung up around them, and preconceived ideas are really tough to get around. That plus we're interested in expanding more of our presence around the world, and to have church as the official name is a very difficult thing in some countries.
Where it's predominantly Muslim or Hindu might be a problem.
That, or where there's a state religion, you can't really establish another church. So if we have a teaching center, if we have an ongoing concern that is based on education, that's a whole different idea than establishing a church.
Please outline for us the basic principles as you see them of New Thought.
New Thought as a movement has its roots in some Eastern philosophies and traditions, Eastern meaning Indian, Hindu, some Buddhist kinds of things, but it really began in New England in the 19th century. And the principle behind New Thought, or the concept, is that the human mind influences one's environment to the extent that, in essence, mind creates your world. Not the world, but your world. My mind creates my experience of the world. your mind does the same thing. One's mind creates that.
If my mind creates my experience of the world, does it also create the reality of my world, or only the way I experience that reality? Does it actually change some objective reality?
I guess yes, except what is objective. You know, in order to be
Something that a third party independent observer would agree upon.
yes, yes, the way I can prove that for myself is when I get with my sisters and we talk about an event that we all experienced together in childhood or any other